order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'm not sure of this particular part of the process, but we do have a couple of members that, or at least one member that won't be here tonight. Should we excuse them during the study session?
Sure, you can do both.
Traditionally, can we do that for both meetings at one time?
No, I would do
two separate ones?
Yeah.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Kephart?
I'll make a motion to excuse James.
Thank you. We have a motion to excuse Mr. Kephart. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. All right, now we will go on to changes to the agenda.
No changes?
No changes. All right, communications.
No communications.
All right, and now we go to discussion items, the data summit.
Very good. Well, we do data summits in 3 times a year in West Valley. So this is our data summit that will look at primarily the iReady scores that we have in grades K through 8 in reading and math, looking from fall to spring and looking at the growth that our students have had from fall to spring. The Smarter Balance Assessment is also administered in the spring, but we don't receive the results back in time to have it at this data summit, so we'll have that in the fall, and we'll take a look at our Smarter Balance scores, which are grades 3 through 8 and high school. So at this time, we have Stacy Drake here, Assistant Superintendent, and she's going to take us through the first part of the data and looking at the iReady scores. And then we have additional data in there from our, primarily looking at post-secondary data. We have the EDRC, the Educational Data Research Center, and we'll take a look at how our students are doing after they graduate. We also have graduation rate, and we have college and high school, and we have some amazing data from our JROTC program. We have 17 students that are receiving scholarships out of JROTC, these recent graduates. So that's hot off the press. Appreciate Jed Waters helping to get that data for this data summit. So that's going to be exciting to look at as well. All right, I'll turn it over to Stacy.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much for allowing me to share the Summer Data Summit with you. The first section is the WVSD, which is the state kindergarten assessment. We've already looked at that, so if there's no questions, this would be from last fall, how our kindergartners came into school. They're assessed in, actually the deadline this last fall was November 15th, so we use it to measure our early learning efforts and to identify what areas we need to do more professional development for our community child care providers. So there's no questions about the WVSD, which you've already seen.
One of the things I would highlight there is that in the past, math has been the lowest area, and we have had professional development in that area. And now, for last fall, the lowest area was social emotional, and that social emotional piece we've been hearing from our early learning partners that it's a challenge. Yeah. So challenge in the early learning classrooms and challenge as they come into kindergarten.
Yes. A lot of it is related, according to our early learning partners, is related to speech and language. They have a lot of students that either have not adequate vocabulary or language production or poor articulation. And in the field, that's attributed to COVID. These are the babies that were, their faces were covered by masks, and so were the caregivers, those that were in child care full time. And so without being able to see the mamas or the caregivers' mouths move, then more than ever, there's a need for speech. And we're seeing that now in our preschool too, our special ed preschool. It's a lot of kids qualifying for speech and language. The good thing is early intervention works, and we're able to get those students the speech and language strategies and activities that they need to develop those sounds and so that they can be successful in school. So we will continue with our early learning providers working on social, emotional, and language in this coming year.
I have a question, can I ask early on? Just
Yeah.
point of information for me, because I'm not real clear on it. I should know this, but I hate to admit that I don't. So if I go to that first slide, it says West Valley School District, Yakima, all students. And you can see as you go across and you get to 2025, that number is a little bit lower than the other years. But that percentage represents a percentage of what? I mean,
It's the percentage of incoming kindergartners that scored as kindergarten ready in all 6 domains.
okay.
All 6.
So there's a slide, that third one that says West Valley School District with the navy blue bars on it.
Yes.
No,
That
number 6,
shows the
page
6
6.
domains. Again, the West Valley community is highest in physical, gross motor skills, fine motor skills. We're again scoring very high in that area, and this is what Peter was talking about. It used to be math that was lowest for us. We worked with our providers on early math skills and activities, making math fun for birth to 5 children. And then last spring, and again this year, we'll focus on social emotional.
And thank you for mentioning language. I see that also is one of the lower scores. It's tied.
They go hand in hand. If you can't communicate your needs as a birth to 5 child, you have a hard time
Regulating.
maintaining your social emotional status that's deemed kindergarten ready, as you can imagine. It's really about communication.
And the social emotional, that's part of like self-regulation. That's part of
Yes.
it. Yeah. Thank
Again,
you.
if
Thank
you
you.
can't say what your needs are, if your sock is wrinkled or your pants are too tight, you can't ask for help. Sometimes you end up fighting or having a tantrum and nobody knows why.
Yeah.
So we're working really heavy on language. Okay, the next section shows just our kindergarten reading scores, the spring scores. So these are just from last spring.
And that's page
the
11.
June.
Sorry to interrupt. But page 11. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a hard time seeing the page numbers, so maybe you didn't. It's very, page 10, page 11, yes. So this shows for each school the percentage of students when the window closed in like the first week of June that we just had, the percentage of students that were on grade level. So that's the green. They're deemed as on grade level for where they should be at the end of kindergarten, and the yellow is just slightly behind. They call it, 1 year behind, but it might not even be a full year. So this year we are very proud of our scores. In the past we've had schools that have had several schools that have had 100% in the green, and we do have some classrooms that were 100% in the green. But considering the implications of the social emotional status and the language, the fact that we're basically at 90%, which is our strategic plan goal for kindergarten or for all grades to have 90% of our students on grade level at the end of the year, that's pretty fabulous. This next slide just shows the definitions for the following slide, which is, this is a reading. We're now talking about iReady reading. Remember K-8, so this is a district level in reading, what each one of those columns stand for. So the first column on the left is the national norm. So iReady does a norming across the country with all students that are using iReady. For a long time, we had to stick with the pre-COVID norms, but we finally got a new norm. So you can see 38% is the national norm in the green, and then if you look at the far right, the West Valley School District, we have 42% in the dark green. Early on grade level is the lighter green. So the national norm is 20, we're at 21%. One grade level below is 24%. For the national norm, and the West Valley School District is at 21%. And then the national norm for just 2 grade levels below is 9%, we're at 7, and then 3 or more grade levels below is that dark red, and we're at 8%. And then the national year to date is all the students, the average of all the students across the country that took the iReady test. And then the students in Washington. And then the far right is the West Valley School District, and that's for reading. And the next
So
page.
Stacy,
Yes.
on the percentages, like where do you want to be? Not compared to other districts or state, but do we have what we want our norm to be?
Well, we always want to beat.
Well, I know.
The norms and the state and the national average. I mostly have projections of growth. So when we get to the growth page, I'll talk about where I think we should be.
Thank you.
But the overall goal is 90%, right? For meeting standard.
But in some of
At
those.
grade levels. So
Right.
we're, K-8, we're at 63% in the green because when we do the pyramid, they combine the two greens.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So then this next page is still reading, K-8, and this is where our students entered last fall and where they exited. So you can see we went from 19 right on grade level to 43% on grade level, so forth. And then this next page, which is page 16, shows spring to spring for 3 years. So you can see that we are rather consistent in where we've been the past few years. It's quite remarkable. We were actually pleased that we were very consistent to what we were a year ago, because if you remember, this was our first year of implementation for our K-5 reading adoption, and the literature says that when your first year of implementation, expect to see your scores dip. And we did in a couple grade levels, which you'll see in a minute, but overall, we were right where we were the year before. And then the following page is fall to spring per grade level. And the following page is 6, 7, 8. Which is page 18. And then on page 19 is spring to spring again per grade level. And what I think is interesting about this is really the gains that were made from there was a little bit of a slump last year in kinder. We brought it back up to 62%. And then it looks like first grade, we've had a tiny bit of a slide. And what we're finding is this new curriculum, we use a section that was optional called structured literacy in our K-1-2 classrooms, which follows the research around the science of reading. So it's very heavy phonics based. If you've read any of the recent news reports, there's states that are adopting science of reading as a mandate for the entire state. Our state hasn't done that. Back 30 years ago, there was a battle between whole language and phonics space, but the research, the literature really does show that kids early on need to learn letter names and sounds and how letters work together and how to learn to read in a very scientific way. We can't just do whole word reading and leave it to chance and think their brains are just going to figure it out. Our brains were, created, when you're born, your brain is created to communicate, but not necessarily to read. That conditioning in the brain has to happen through language play. And what we're finding in schools in the last 15, 20 years with the invention of cell phones and screens, and I used to say VCRs, but I don't say that. Kids don't have language play. Mamas are not singing nursery rhymes on the way to the market. They're handing their cell phone in the back seat. And that is not building that part of the brain to be ready to read. So we're having to do that in kindergarten and first grade. We believe that the dip in first grade, it's just a slight dip from 55 to 51, is that this is a new curriculum and those students came in and the curriculum expected those kids to have that language play, which is heavy in kinder. So we're hopeful that we'll see it come up for first grade next year. And the next page is 6, 7, 8. Relatively steady, little increase in 8th grade. And remember that you just adopted a new ELA curriculum for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which is part of the same vendor. It's called Into Literature, and it's very structured and built on the research. So we're very excited about that, to have that guaranteed viable curriculum across all of our classrooms in the mid-level campus. Right now, there's a lot of variability about what's being taught, and so we're looking forward to that. The next page is math. So again, we're looking at the national norm, the national year to date, which is all the kids across the country that took the iReady assessment, and then in Washington State and the West Valley School District.
So Stacy, like you did before, can you share that for the recording, so that maybe people watching online?
Sorry.
Can you share the numbers again, like you did with reading?
Sure. So the national norm, 32%, which is mid-grade level or above. The West Valley School District was 38%, mid or above grade level. The national norm for early on grade level, which is the light green, is 21%, and the West Valley School District is at 23%. One grade level below, the national norm is 32%, and we are at 26%. Two grade levels below is 8%, and we were at 6%, and three or more grade levels below, the national norm was 8%, and the West Valley School District is at 7%. So
Thank
then
you.
fall to spring, district-wide, K-8 in mathematics. You can see the gains that were made about how the kids came in on grade level and how they exited in June. And then the next page, which is page 23, is again those 3 years of spring to spring, and we're quite consistent again on where we are. We have a lot of teachers anxious for a new math curriculum. We are as well, but we'll see how things play out with the budget. If that's something we're going to review next, it would be the following school year, not this fall, or if we're going to put it off a year.
When you said that they're anxious, is that anxiously excited or anxious?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's a lot of folks, mostly K-5, that are not happy with the current curriculum for mathematics and only use parts of it. And, if we end up putting it off a year, we may consider bringing another trainer in and getting an update. So it's just something we have to consider. Our biggest expenses in curriculum are ELA and math, and we just did 2 years of ELA, and we may need to take a break before we bring math in. We are piloting, remember we talked about this a couple months ago, we're piloting the high school algebra curriculum. We actually have a classroom at the mid-level that's piloting as well, because it's been over 20 years since they've had a new curriculum, and there's something that's hot off the press, and it's really fabulous. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in the spring, just so that they don't have to wait. And then the next page, which is page 24, is the changes fall to spring, K-5, and then the following page is 6, 7, 8. And then here's for mathematics. The following page is those 3 years of K-5. Again, pretty consistent. We've had some jumps in third grade that are encouraging. And then 6, 7, 8 on the following page. And now I'm on page 28. And this page just explains to you, this talks about the difference between their typical growth goal and their stretch growth goal. So in iReady, which you'll see in a section later, in iReady, when the students come in the fall and they take their diagnostic assessment, it's considered a baseline, and depending on what that number is, iReady assigns them a growth goal based on a number of points. So if a student came in at 274, they may say, you need to make 12 points by the end of the year, and that is the annual typical growth goal, meaning across the nation, that's about the average a student would grow in 1 year's time. So it's 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. And we, of course, would want all of our students to make 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. The next section below that is stretch growth, and that would obviously be more than 1 year's growth. If students come in behind grade level, if they're in the yellow or the red, they're assigned a higher point value, even for their typical growth. But for their stretch growth, that goal is higher. We don't expect them necessarily to get caught up in 1 year, but to make more than 1 year's growth, so eventually we can close that gap. So this graph just shows you the percentage of students across the district at each grade level who met their typical growth and their stretch growth. And we'll see that a little later. Are there any questions? Keep going? Okay. So this next section is where we're still talking about reading. We're looking at the percentage of students who are on grade level by school. So remember that the red is more than 2 years behind, 2 or more years behind. The yellow, this is where we've now decreased from the 5-point scale to a 3-point scale. So the red is 2 or more years behind, the yellow is 1 year behind, and the green is on grade level. And it's by school. We are on page, here we are,
Page 30.
36. So that's by school, the percentage of students that were in each category, K-8. And then the following page is math. Then the next page is reading by grade level. So you can see the percentage. This is that same page you saw at the beginning when we talked about the walk kids. 90% of our kindergarten students are on grade level, which was our strategic plan goal. And you can see so forth.
So that's page 34 is reading. You can see the 90% for kindergarten.
Yes. And then the following page is math. Yep, that's the right page. 84% in kindergarten.
Mhm.
And then we're on growth. So this is where we're looking at that annual typical growth goal. So if you look up at the top, that big blue bar that says 131%, that's the median across the district of the progress towards the growth goal. And then if you look down at the bottom, underneath each school, that horizontal blue bar is the median number. So if we took all the students' growth in a tandem and we went to the middle number, that student was 131% of the way towards their growth goal. So they had met their growth goal, their typical growth goal, and gone beyond. And that's of course what we want to see. We want to see more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. But that next column is where it says percent met. That's the percentage of students who met their annual typical growth goal. So that's really what we talk about. I talk about with principals and they talk about with the teachers, is we really want to be somewhere between 80 and 90, which is a lofty goal, but that's where we expect to be, of our students meeting their annual typical growth goal in both reading and math. And then the next column, which happens to be light blue, is that stretch goal. The same thing, that median number, the percentage of students, their progress towards their stretch goal, and then the percent met that stretch goal. And then the next column is students with improved placement, which we also would like to see that high. We want students to move from one level to the next. And then the following page has the rest of them. And then it's the same thing for math. We're looking at annual typical growth. We look at this with teachers. Principals meet with teachers and talk about what the percentage of students that met their growth goal, that those students made 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. We went through a period a couple of years ago where we had a lot of our students who entered in the green just stay right where they were, or maybe even dip down a little bit. We worked hard on that to make sure we're doing small groups, because even students who enter at grade level deserve to make 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. So we expect to see a student who's in 4th grade who comes in reading at the 6th grade level. We'd like to see them exit at the 7th grade level. We've worked hard on that. We've seen a lot of improvement in that area. Okay, so that's math, growth goals. And then this is by grade level. We're back to reading. So looking at that percent met. And then for both the annual typical growth goal and the stretch goal. then the next, the next page is math. I'm on page 45. So that is by grade level, the percentage of students who have met that goal and their stretch goal. Okay, is there any question about iReady diagnostic for the 24-25 school year? Okay, the next section is the Washington State Improvement Framework. Oh, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. The next section is by teacher. So you'll see those purple and blue grids. So this is, we can talk about that. Let's get on there. It's upside down. Yeah. So that page that has the purple and blue, that's for reading and for math, for iReady, and it shows the percentage of students on grade level for each teacher in fall, winter, and spring. And so you don't get to see the names of the teachers. We don't publicly put that out there, but principals do, and we talk about it, and who needs support. We might need instructional coaching. So that is a helpful tool for us. So it's by school at the top, yep, so you can just click through. Mountain View, Summit View, Apollo, Apollo Campus, Innovation Center. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, the next section is the Washington State Improvement Framework. I think it's 2018 to 2022 anymore, but what we're looking at is the 2024 scores. So this, the WSIF is what the state uses to score each school. It's a 10-point scale based on several factors. If you remember back when the state assessment first became mandatory, it was called Annual Learning Progress, AYP, and each school had to make AYP, and it was based purely at that time on the percentage of students that earned a 3 or a 4 on the state assessment. So for elementary school students, we were only talking about 3rd and 4th grade in West Valley. Now it's a combination of factors, including attendance and student growth percentiles. Student growth percentiles are based on the state assessment, the reading and math, or ELA and math assessment. So for every 3rd grader that earned a 292 on the state assessment, then the following year they take their scores in 4th grade and they measure the percentile that they're at for improvement. So a couple years ago, if you remember, we talked about Atana. We celebrated their 4th grade team because they were at like 85 or 85th percentile for improvement from 3rd grade to 4th grade. So that is part of this makeup. If you're looking at the far left column for Atana, where it shows they're at a 7.8. It's a decile, it's a 10-point scale. Of course, you want to be dark blue. You want to be the darker blue is the closer to 10. And it's broken out by subcategory. So again, it's based on percentage meeting standard, student growth percentiles, attendance, the progress of students on the WIDA. So again, it's not how many students exit out of English language support, how many of our multilingual students. It's based on the progress they're making. So they look at the arc of how students, with the 5 years it takes to exit out of needing English language support and to become proficient in English, and they want to make sure that the students in 1st grade or kinder are mirroring that arc. It looks like they're going to make progress. So that's factored into that 10-point scale, and then for high school, it's 9th grade on track and dual credit as well. And then your graduation rate. All those things factor into that bar. So it's a much better formula to measure school schools and to look at how we're doing. Those lines across the bottom, you don't want to dip down below those lines, depending on whether you're a Title I school or school-wide school or just all schools. If you dip below that line, then you will be eligible for school improvement. So schools want to stay above the line in all of those subcategories. So you can see at Tannin Valley, one of our schools with the lowest poverty rate is doing quite fabulously with their blue WSIF. And then on the following page, you can see a TANM with the 3-year, the 2022 cycle, the 2023 cycle. It's a 3-year average, and then they give us our 2024 data. So we're really comparing the 2024 to the 2023 cycle, that 3-year average, and the 2022 cycle, which is the 3 years prior.
So I did catch that, I apologize for the typo, that the cover page on this is this cycle here, the 2022 to 2024. Yeah. So thank you for that.
So we're happy with the TANM. You can see something that we look at is that far right, students with disabilities. We've worked hard in the West Valley School District to implement inclusionary practices, making sure students are recognized as gen ed students first and included in as much gen ed time as is appropriate, determined by the IEP team. We've done a lot of push in classrooms, meaning that students get to stay with their peers, and we push the experts in instead of pulling them out. And at a TANM, those efforts are certainly paying off for students with disabilities. Okay, and then Apple Valley is the next page. So doing fabulous, lots of blue on that page. You can see at Apple Valley, there's a little variance in students with disabilities. We're working on that. We did discover, you'll see some of the schools have lower students with disabilities, and we discovered this school year that we had the students with disabilities, depending on their category, may qualify for an alternative assessment to the state assessment, to the SVAC. And we discovered this year that we hadn't taken advantage of that in a couple of years. So that could be a factor in some of our lower areas of students with disabilities. And then Cottonwood. Yep, and then the next school is Mountain View. And you can see on the following page the 3 years of students with disabilities at Mountain View. The 2024 data it's 2024 data, but it's not this year's state assessment. It's not the 2025 state assessment, it's the 2024 state assessment. So even though it was released in 2024, it's the previous year's state assessment data. So Mountain View also has done a lot to include students with disabilities in the gen ed classroom. This was just their first year with a self-contained special ed classroom, and they worked hard to ensure that students were put in classrooms where they could function and meet their IEP goals with minimal support. The next page is Summit View. We looked at this data in February or March at Summit View and added another parapro to support transitional bilingual instruction. Because of this data, our ELL students are dipping below that line, and so we re-examined the budget and aligned our resources to that school to make sure we could have smaller groups for that push-in model. But the students with disabilities looks really good at Summit View. And you can see that improvement on the following page compared to the 2023 cycle. White Hollow, same thing. We looked at this data and we said we need to put more support at White Hollow. Hollow also works hard in their inclusionary practices, and it's paying off. You can see the bump above the line for the 2024 data. In fact, Peter and I were both invited to a staff meeting where we shared this data because Wide Hollow went up in every category on that page by student group, and that was really remarkable. Mid-level campus. The mid-level campus has been in school improvement for 2 years. The first year was for American Indian Alaska Native students, but this last year they fell into school improvement for students with disabilities. So we had a little bit of funding from the state to implement some different strategies. So we're hopeful, and that's really, a lot of that was our PBIS and our student advocate from the Community and Schools Agency that could have a caseload of students with disabilities and make sure that their basic needs were met, that their families had resources, that they were attending school. If they needed behavior support, that they got what they needed, at the same time as implementing a really strong PBIS system across the board to raise attendance for all students. You can see the 3-year cycle for mid-level campus, and then the Innovation Center. Again, we looked at the Innovation Center data. They don't have the benefit of a couple cycles because they're a fairly new school. This year, Mr. Waters in the spring looked at the data and redid the whole schedule. We added professional development to be able to support those designers that are integrating ELA, math, science, social studies into the CTE frameworks and those pathways. So we're looking forward to those scores coming up as well. We also suffered a little bit at the Innovation Center with the zeros. Students are allowed to opt out of the state assessment, the SBAC, the WCAS, the state science assessment, if their parents choose for them to, but it counts for a 0 at the school level. So we don't encourage it. We really do try to get students to take the test. We have a large number of students at the Innovation Center opt out. Sometimes it's a trend that catches on like wildfire, but it does have implications for the school and for our school improvement status.
Well,
And then the
why do we
last-
let them opt out? Is that a state thing or
Yeah.
what?
Yes,
It's a state to let them opt out?
yes, that's correct.
Yes,
Okay.
they can have any reason.
Okay.
We do keep track. We have a form that parents sign. It's not required by the state.
Yeah.
We have a minimum attendance rate that we need to meet, which we usually do. But when you have a family that needs to opt their student out because
Yeah.
they have test anxiety or they don't believe in the assessment, or I try to convince parents who call me and let them know that it truly is a measure of the school. It was never designed to be a measure of the student. It sort of turned into that, unfortunately. Luckily, we have other ways to place students in AP classes and those sort of things, but we do encourage all of our families to take the assessment. So the last school is the high school. We're working on MLL strategies there this coming school year. We have some professional development planned, and working stronger with new teachers, working with our special education students. And again, making sure that those who are eligible for the portfolio assessment, that alternative assessment, the SBAC, many times what's happened over the past few years, if it's a student didn't sign up in time, if the IEP team did not decide in time that they were eligible for that alternative assessment, which is called the WAAIM, which is like a portfolio assessment, then they just got a 0 on the SBAC because they weren't able to perform on a screen. So they just got the 0 with that. Now that we've caught that and we're training more people to give the data, and we put it as a standing question in the fall in our IEP meetings, to make sure students have that option, then we're hopeful that data will improve.
All right, well, thank you, Stacy. And we'll move on to the second half here. We got about 15 minutes left. So we'll look at student enrollment here. So that's, oops, I had it all queued up and now here we go. Student enrollment, West Valley. That is page 76. So page 76, you can see, just like we heard at our last school board meeting, the enrollment has been stable in West Valley, not seeing the growth that you might expect with seeing the developments that we have in the district, because birth rate is going down. But the birth rate going down has been balanced by incoming students, so we're pretty flat on enrollment. Our demographics have changed over time, where we have a greater percentage of Hispanic students, and you can see that towards the bottom of that page on page 76. Next, we always look at our student demographics and compare it to our teacher demographics. I also included the state information on that as well. So we are disproportionately have our teachers are female and white, and so we do not reflect the diversity of our students with our staff. Next is the student attendance data over time, and that is on page 81. You can see that with COVID, there was quite a dip in daily attendance, basically. It's chronically absent students is what that is. It's greater than 10%, so it's greater than 18 days of absence, 180-day calendar. So the most challenging year was the 21-22 school year, with only 65.7% of students having regular attendance. And then we've gone up since then. So in the 23-24 school year, it's 73.3% of students had regular attendance, but that's still a ways from where we were pre-COVID. And we, continue to emphasize the importance of coming to school and having daily attendance so that students can access the learning. Student discipline data is the next set of data, and that's on page 83. This is the percent of students having suspensions. So we did go down slightly at 23-24, so that's good to see. And we always want to look at disproportionate data. And so our largest ethnic group is Hispanic, and compare that to white. So there was a nice dip there as well in suspensions, but there still is a little bit of a difference. It was a 5.4% rate of suspension for Hispanic students and 4.7% for white students. Ideally, you would have similar statistics there. Next is the least restrictive environment data. We usually have this to share at our spring data summit, but this year OSPI had not released that, so this is new data for the board. So this is on page 85, thank you. So page 85, so this is the percent of students who are served with the IEP, who are served 80% to 100% of their school day in the general education setting. And we have gone from our baseline of 56% up to 76% in November 23, and then a slight dip to 24% in November of 2024. We still have room that we can grow on here. So we kind of hit a plateau here at the 74, 76, 74, but we're still going to be working to increase the percentage of students that are served in the general education setting. The flip side is that is the next slide, or the next page, and that it would be the percent of students who are served in 0 to 39% of their school day in general education setting. So we'd like to see that go down, and we're really kind of at that plateau of 12%. So we'd like to see a decrease in students in a self-contained setting and increase into more general education settings. So we'll continue to work on that with our inclusionary practices. Next is 9th grade on track for graduation. And I've shared, previously the board asked to include information about West Valley compared to the state average, and so we have that information here. The most recent data we have is the 23-24 school year, and so that was 68% of students passing all their classes at the high school. We did have this as a formative progress check that we had this year. I did check the school improvement plan, and the most recent data hasn't been updated. We had a presentation by the administration in the spring, and they were waiting for graduation, or waiting for the end of the school year to update the data. So we'll continue to work on getting that progress check data, because there's quite a lag here in the data that we receive from the state. But it was, the most recent we have is the 23-24 school year, which was 68% for West Valley. At the state, it was 70.6, yeah, 71%. So this has been a focus during the past year, and hopefully we would see an increase when we get the 24-25 data. Next is the graduation rate. So that is page 91. And you can see we were at 89.2% for the class of 2024. So that's moving from the baseline we have there was 81.7%, or 82% to 89%. So that's a nice increase over time. And next is the state. So the state is at 82.8. So we're above the state average with our graduation rate. Dual credit. We've shared this before, but 12th graders from the class of 2024, we had 93% of our 12th graders graduate with college credit, compared to the state is 77.8%. So much higher than the state. And really having great opportunities for our students when it comes to college and high school. Next is this data that I had shared and had given a shout out to Jed Waters before he came into the meeting. So Jed's here now. But really appreciate Jed rounding up this data for the class of 2025. You can see there's a total of 17 students that are being assisted through JROTC program. There's graduates of the class of 2025. So 2 from the Army, and Jed did a nice job of sharing this information. It's in the board, and it's public record for the public to look at. 2 students there, 2 graduates going into the Army with tuition assistance, 100% tuition assistance. And then Army National Guard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students in the Army National Guard. The Navy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students going to the Navy with 100% tuition assistance. 3 students going into the Air Force with 100% tuition assistance, and 1 student going into the Space Force with 100% tuition assistance. So also, Jed had shared these important notes for us, that students that go through our JROTC program, they're able to have a starting salary when they go into the military much higher than someone who's not in the JROTC program. So there's just so many great opportunities for our kids that are happening here with West Valley High School and the JROTC program. I appreciate Jed, your leadership, and of course Colonel James and Sergeant Master Bynum for their leadership of the program. Next, we have the registered apprenticeship and internships. So this past year, we had 2 students complete registered apprenticeship. Those are paid apprenticeship for on-the-job training. So the students have hourly wage, high school credit, and they are articulated for college credit as well. So a student completed an apprenticeship at Pesco Aerospace, and another student at Van Doren Sales. And then we had students that are continuing, that have graduated, that are being placed into apprenticeships. We have 2 of those students. And then we had students working for unpaid internships at our community partners. We appreciate Ray's, Stein Ace Hardware, and Summit Thrift. They placed 8 students in the first semester, and there were 4 students in the second semester because 4 of the students from the first semester had aged out. So great opportunities for our kids there. Next is the FAFSA information. So the application for the free application for federal student aid. This is a little concerning. Our baseline data was 64% of students, seniors, completing the FAFSA, and then we had a plateau of 54%. And then the most recent data we have for the class of 2025 is 44% of students completing the FAFSA. That will go up over time as students apply. Oftentimes it's students going to the community college and they realize that they can get some financial aid if they get the FAFSA done. So this number will go up slightly, but I don't predict that it's going to hit the 54% that we've seen over the past couple of years. So it is a concern. So, we'll have to dig into why this is. I think there is kind of a general sense that you don't need to go to college to make a little wage if you can go to some of these apprenticeship programs that we have. So those are good alternatives for our kids. But you'll see later, the data is clear that a college a four-year college degree does result in higher wages, and so we want to give our kids those opportunities. Next is all the postgraduate information. So we have about 5 minutes to get through this. This is the data from the Educational Research and Data Center. There's not many school districts looking at this data. Our good friend Chris Nesmith, who's superintendent at Alma, was integral in getting us looking at this data, and we've continued after he left us. And so it's probably West Valley and Alma are two that are using this data a lot. But it's important for us to look at success for our kids are not just graduating. It's for what are they going to do after they graduate. We want them to go on to post-secondary education or apprenticeship program. We want them to have high skills and high wages. We want our students to be successful after they graduate. So we'll take a look here. And we've seen some nice increases over time. They have quite a time span. It's from 2005 to class of 2023. You can see on the handout here. But the most recent data we have is that 32% of students who graduate from West Valley go on to a four-year college, 24% go on to a two-year college, and 44% were not enrolled. And I did include the state data as a comparison. And so we're right around the state average. The state average was 33% going on to a four-year college, 22% going to a two-year college, and 45% not enrolled. So right there with the state average. Next is 108, page 108. So this is looking at the same data, just over time, a little easier to read. So again, 32% to a four-year college, 24% to a two-year college. And then next is what percent of graduates enrolled in college during the first year after graduation. So that's statewide, so that's the same data. Next is looking by program. So the FRPL, again, that's free and reduced price lunch. So students of poverty versus students not of poverty, special education versus non-special education. So interesting, we do have gaps, but you can look at our baseline. So we went from students on free and reduced lunch it was 0.5% going to four-year college. Now it's 22%. So even though the 22% is not the same as the comparison group, it's still quite an increase we've seen over time. And then even with special education, it was 0 to 5%. It was basically 0 point something percent and up to 7% now. So we obviously want to see increases in student achievement, but we have seen increases over time. We're still seeing gaps, and we'd like to close those gaps, but we're seeing some nice increases over time. If you look at female versus male, is the next page. That is page 111. So there is a slight gap, 34% to 30%. So not as big as maybe we've heard kind of anecdotally about a gap between young men, young women going to college. Next page is looking at ethnicity. So Hispanic versus white, we do have a gap there as well. But Hispanic going from 16% to 23%, that's a nice increase in the four-year college rate. But there's still a gap between Hispanic students and white students, and we'd like to do our best to close that gap. Next is students who have less than a 3.0 average to students with greater than 3.0 average. We would predict that with greater than 3.0 is higher college going rate. But again, you can see the increase from the students with less than 3.0. It used to be only 3% going to a four-year college. Now it's up to 14%. So we've seen some nice increase over time there. Next is where did our students go to college? So public versus private. You can see that information there. Next is which actual institution did they attend? So, we have a nice partnership with Central Washington University, and so it was 14% from the class of 2023 that went on to Central. And highest is Yakima Valley College, right here locally, and having a very affordable education for students. Next is the pre-college course taking. So used to have very high rates of remediation needed. So I always look at the two-year college in math. That kind of always jumps out to me. It used to be 66% needing remediation who went to a two-year college. Now it's down to 31%. So we've really done some great work over time to provide students the skills to place into college level math or to have a college level class that they're taking here on this campus. So Jamie Zeller teaches a full load of college and high school financial algebra 2, and that counts as a college class. So every student taking that, they're not going to have to take remediation when they go to a 2-year or 4-year college. So lots of improvements on that remediation work. We have the persistence and retention is there, and we've got the highest degree after 8 years. So that's from 2016. So there's quite a lag on this data, but we're pretty much close to out of time. So I just kind of want to get to, I believe it is the last slide. Yeah, this is the earnings. Last slide is page 124. I mean, this is really important here that students who have a bachelor's degree that graduate from West Valley, so students with a bachelor's degree have a higher rate of earning than students with an associate degree and higher than students with a high school diploma. So there is value in getting that 4-year degree, and we would continue to have that as a goal for our students, while also giving other pathways through the apprenticeship programs that are going to provide students high skill, high wages. We don't have enough students in the N to have that data for the apprenticeship, but for the state data, students who complete apprenticeship also have very high paying, right up there with the bachelor's degree. All right, so we made it to the final slide and get a couple minutes for a break. Sound good? Mr. Strong?
I need to run out and get my glasses, unfortunately. So why don't we start, if it's okay with everyone, 7:05. That gives us enough time to stretch, get everything together. And we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here for the study session. It's a lot of material to go through, so we really appreciate you being here to partake and listen to it. Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the study session. It is 6:57 p.m., again, Tuesday, July 22nd. We will start the regular board meeting at 7:05. Thank you. right, it is 7:05 PM. Today again is Tuesday, July 22nd. We'll go ahead and call the regular school board meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get started out, just go ahead and make a motion that we excuse Mr. Kephart officially from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and to approve. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on, we'll go to any changes in the agenda. Dr. Finch?
No changes.
All right, communications?
Response to public comment is a placeholder, and we do have recognition of staff who are retiring, and we do have, I believe, 2 that are here this evening, so we'd like to recognize them at this time. So just making sure, is Kristen Chadwick? She's not here, I don't believe. Okay. So we're going to recognize Leanne Rice, who's worked as our substitute coordinator, 8 years of service to the West Valley School District. So Leanne, come on up. Handshakes all around.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you being here this evening, Leanne, and appreciate your work throughout the years. And then next we have, let's make sure we get all the number of years right here. So Kevin Petrie, custodian at Cottonwood, so 9 years of service to West Valley, and I pulled out his plaque here so you can see it's very nice. So Kevin, come on up.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your great work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that's
All
all
right.
3 of them?
Yep, that's good, and then you can move on to public comments.
All right, now, next on the agenda is item 6, public comments to non-discussion agenda items. And again, I will read the reminder here. Members of the public who would like to provide public comments will sign in. Speakers will be called in the order that they signed in to speak. Speakers will be given 3 minutes for their comments. Public comment is not the proper forum to address concerns about specific staff members or member. If a person has concerns about a specific staff member, they should make an appointment with the superintendent to address their concerns. So with that, we have one person that I see signed up, Ms. Blevins. And again, as usual, when we don't have a mic over there, or do we?
No. Yeah, just, you can come on up here, Carol. Thank you.
If
Yeah.
you would, start by always start by introducing yourself, though. As always, it's certainly appreciated.
Blevins, and I have 2 grandchildren in a town and valley, and they're doing very well, and I really enjoyed the whole setup there at a town and valley. But I guess I want to discuss some more. On June 24th, I made a request to be allowed to say the Lord's Prayer during my public comment. And then, so then I did a little deeper dive in this, because Superintendent Finch and I, we talked about a little bit. So this is the case that I cited. It was a mother, her name's Taryn Swan, and she is from Ventura, California. And she spoke at a school board meeting about an issue she had where the school had transferred her daughter without her knowledge. So then she went to the city council meeting and voiced about the same issue. And still in her allotted time, she began to pray. And at that time, they stopped her from praying. So then, First Liberty, I don't know if everybody is acquainted with that organization. It's an organization that stands up for people's First Amendment rights of free speech and free religious speech. And so they got involved. And so they stated that if you open up a forum for public comment, that we have the constitutional right to speak our opinions and or pray to whoever that we desire to pray to. And as long as we are not threatening or obscene. And that is at any government building. So again, I want to make a request that I could pray the Lord's Prayer during my public comment time. So that's what I got tonight. And then, just if you want some more information, this is from First Liberty, the info, and you can go on and you can find First Liberty. There's several different, they're working on several different things. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that's all we have on the list, but I will open it up to anyone here if you have comments or something you would just want to bring to our attention and would like to get up to the podium and speak. This is a time to raise your hand and say yes. If not, we'll move on. Anybody? All right. Public comment discussion for non-discussion agenda items closed. We'll move on.
Or you could also let our staff that showed up for the retirement, you can sneak out if you like.
Okay.
That's too.
But you're welcome to stay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 7, approval of consent agenda. There are a number of items there. If anybody has any particular concerns about any one of them, now's the time to speak. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved. We have a motion. All right, we'll go ahead and vote on the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item 8 on the agenda, I believe.
Yep.
Approval of, discussion items. 2 items there in particular, the 25-26 budget, first public hearing. Dr. Finch, anything to add to the information that was in the package?
Yes, so we'll have the presentation here from Sheila Wood, our Director of Finance. We'll also have some discussion on the long-range facilities planning. After those discussion items, then we will have the first public hearing for the 25-26 budget. That's required by law. So we'll open up for public hearing, and then we'll close the public hearing for the budget, and then we'll have just public comment for the long-range facilities planning as well. So first we'll start with Sheila Wood. She prepared the budget, which was in the board packet. And Sheila, maybe just give a few comments about that.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Sheila Wood, Director of Finance. I'll be presenting the 25-26 budget and four-year forecast. I hope you had a chance to review it. First of all, I want to comment that there is a lot of unknowns in the next year's budget, just so that this was a very challenging budget to prepare. Due to the grants, we don't know what we will get and what we will not, what will be reduced. We also have done a very conservative enrollment forecast, but it is, I think, necessary. So the contents of this budget is broken out with the budget and excess levy summary of all funds. That will be the first slide, and then we'll go to the key points. The worksheet is just designed to show you that we budgeted by program. The enrollment by comparison by year. I did this new this year. I prepared it so that you could see actual for the last 3 years. General fund budget, the MSOP disclosure, which is our materials, supplies, and occupational expenses, and then the four-year forecast, which we must do by law. So this is a summary of all funds, and as you can see, it's broken out by the general fund, ASB fund, debt service fund, capital projects, and transportation vehicle fund. It shows your total revenue, less your expenditures, which then gives you your net profit, gives you your beginning balance, and your expected ending balance. Also gives you your levies for your general fund and your debt service.
So I guess one of the highlights is that you're presenting a balanced budget tonight for the general fund.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
So for the key points, I'm going to have to read my own slide. I try and pick out items that I think are pertinent each year to each budget. And the first one is the student enrollment. I wanted to point out that it's 5260 in total, which is 4835 for the basic ed plus the 425 for Running Start, TK, and ALE. Enrollment is projected to decline. We have been seeing a slight decrease each year. Open Doors and the Arizona State University will be discontinued next year. They are very small amounts though, so. The salary information is provided by the Human Resources Department, and the estimated salary increases range from 1.75 to 2.75. Those have been bargained in. The staffing, we anticipate 337 certificated staff and 225 classified staff, and that's well within reason to the prior year. The beginning fund balance for the general fund is estimated to be 10.7 million, which is 11.9% of the total budgeted expenditures. The total revenue projected to increase by approximately 376,000, and that is in comparison to budget for 24-25 because they don't have the actuals done yet. The year's not over. That's a relatively small increase. Local revenue is projected to decrease by 213,000. State revenue is projected to increase by 694,000, but I do want to point out some of that is carryover, and some of the grants that are spent will be reduced, so it's a little bit confusing when you look at that. Federal revenue is projected to decrease by 85,000. And I want to point out that I did build in capacity to both revenue and expenditures of 2.5 million, and that is just in any unanticipated expenditures that we may have by grants or carryover, things as that. Total expenditures projected to increase by 349,000. Again, I'm comparing it to the 24-25 budget. Special services and district support programs projected to increase quite a bit, 1.6 million, but basic ed and state and federal grant expenditures projected to decrease. So that's the net. Capital projects is a balanced budget, includes estimated expenditures of 10.7 million. The capital projects budget this year includes capacity for all district-wide projects. This was a little bit of a challenge because we don't know what we're going to do next year with the capital projects fund. We have the defeasance of debt. We also have a potential bond. So Joe and I discussed it, and we budgeted it all of it but 1 million, and then the 400,000 of local revenue. We may not spend it, and that's okay. We have it. If we don't, we'll just use those funds in the next year. Debt service fund, that is all the budget includes expenditures for annual principal and interest payments on all bonds. And I also included possible bond issuance fees, and I worked with D.A. Davidson on those numbers. The ASB fund, those budgets are prepared by the buildings, just so that you're aware of that. And we did have some turnover at the high school, so it was the first year this person prepared the budget. She did a good job, but that's budgeted for the athletic classes and clubs, as you know. So, and House Bill 1660 has kind of caused a decline in their revenue, just so that you know. And the transportation vehicle fund estimated expenditures is 807,975, which I did provide some capacity in case we have a major repair that we'd like to run through that department. We could, and they have quite a healthy beginning balance. So. The purpose of this slide is just to show that we do budget out every single program, revenue to expenditures. I know that's a little bit confusing to look at, but you can see total revenue versus total expenditures by program. I won't go into too much detail on that, but. This is the enrollment comparison by year that I put together for 23, 24, 24, 25, and then the projected 25, 26, so that you can see it by grade, by program. I thought it was kind of interesting. Again, this budget is projected on that enrollment. Should it go higher? Hallelujah. If it is a little lower, we'll have to keep an eye on that.
But again, I guess just a kind of the main idea here is that we're budgeting less students than we had last spring to be conservative and to put us in a position where we'll be able to make the budget and be in a place where we're not running around having to try to cut things left and right.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And also your allocations are given to you based on budget for the first 4 months of the year. You don't want to get way more than you're due because your enrollment's way lower. So it's better to project your enrollment a little lower.
And then we will get, like you said, is it January when the apportionment comes in based on actual?
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just thought this was interesting to show the different balances in the general fund balance for the 23, 24, 24, 25, and then what we budgeted. This is the materials and supplies disclosure, and the purpose of this is to take what the state is allocating us for those expenses and make sure that we are expending it on what they are allocating. So the 4-year forecast, this is the general fund, and basically it is pretty tough to do a 4-year forecast, so I wouldn't put too much stock in those numbers, but we do the best we can with what we know. Capital Projects Fund, like I said, we kind of just, every year we kind of budget quite excessive expenditures so that we have the capacity depending on what projects get done and approved. The debt service fund 4-year forecast, we have a debt service schedule that I work with to prepare the 4-year forecast. And I also work with D.A. Davidson and have them review it as well. Should be in pretty good shape there. The ASB fund, as you can see, they have a little bit of a negative. They're projecting a little bit of a negative, but if they were to fundraise, there's ways to increase that, or we can use some levy funds to offset some of those expenditures. It depends. We'll keep an eye on that. And then for the 4-year forecast, I bumped up their revenue for their fundraisers.
Well, we discussed this. It was done at the building level.
Yes.
They have ample fund balance
Yes, they
to
do.
have a budget that they adopted, and we'll be working with them to make sure that it's sustainable in the future.
Correct. We could not sustain that kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila.
I think that's everything, correct? Oh, transportation vehicle fund, sorry. This one, I work with the director of transportation. We prepare, I prepare the revenue based on the state allocation for the depreciation. That's what funds the transportation department based on her fleet. And then she decides what she's going to spend each year based on that allocation. She'd like to buy, and as you know, 3 buses next year, and that's what we budgeted for. And then any major expenditures, we always put in a little bit of that in case we have a major repair that we can run through that fund and not have it hit our general fund.
And Sheila, you had shared back in June when you gave an overview of the process that the Educational Service District in Yakima does an overview of or reviews the budget. So there's another set of eyes on the
That
project.
is correct, and that has been done.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Help me understand the, I'm sorry.
No, I had a question. I'm just trying to find it, though. Go ahead.
Just for helping me get some clarity on the capital funds. So let's just say you spend all 10 million and you got 1 million left at the end of the year. So how do you put money in there the next year? Because there's 10 million, if you go down to 1, but you might need 5 the next year, do you move it from general fund or?
Typically in the past, before we passed the bond, that is what we did. If we
Okay.
had an excess in the general fund, we called it excess, but if we had a hefty fund balance, we would move some of that out into the capital projects because we do have a lot of upkeep on these buildings
Right.
that need repair. We do get some interest and we do get some rental income, but it's not a lot. So, and I know we will be reserving money for the football.
For what? What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Can you say it a little louder?
Oh, we will start reserving funds for the turf for the next,
Yeah.
for the next 10 years.
And then just so we're clear, you can transfer money from, or funds from the general fund to the capital projects fund, but you can't go the other direction. Right.
My internet isn't working. Are the school bus purchases that are on for tonight, is that in this fiscal year or next?
Yes, 25, 26.
So the ones that we're approving tonight are for the budget that is being, first reading of the budget
Yes.
for next year. Okay.
I guess they're like a year behind. You have to order
Yeah.
almost a year in advance.
Okay.
To get those buses. So
Okay.
she's got her bids together. It took quite some time to get them. this
Right.
year. And then she will place her order once it's approved, but then it's going to take 9 to 12 months to even receive those buses.
Understood. Just was trying to understand the timing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
More questions? Anyone?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Sheila. It's a lot of work from the whole team
It
to,
is.
and to make it a balanced budget, so we really appreciate that.
All right, next we have the long-range facilities planning, facilities master plan.
All right, well, we had a wonderful presentation by our community group that presented a plan to the district, to the board. There was actually a slight typo. It didn't materially change anything, but I put the new document in just so we had that in the public record, that we have the updated plan. The discussion, the last board meeting was about maybe having a community forum, doing that once school's up and running. I don't know if that's something that you want to move forward with. I was hoping to get some direction from the board. Also, back in the spring, we had put on hold 2 of the projects at the junior high, the auditorium and the domestic water piping. We put that on hold and wait for the presentation by the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee, because we'd said we didn't want to put money into a building that we might tear down. Now with the long range plan that has been presented, that junior high building would continue to be used in the future. If the plan were to move forward, eventually it would be the administration office. We would keep the auditorium for community use. We keep the gym for community use. We keep the central kitchen to use for the whole district. And so it would be good for me to get direction from the board. The projects were already approved by the board, so you wouldn't need to approve anything tonight. You would just need to give me direction that we'd want to move forward with the auditorium project and the domestic water piping project, so we can get that done before there's any escalation in cost. And then also we want to have a discussion here on the board about, do we want to move forward? Do you want to get community input? Do you want to move forward? Do you want to put the bond on the, have a discussion about whether we put the bond on the vote in February and move forward with that plan? So it's really a time here in July, gives us lots of leeway to have that discussion and give some direction to the administration.
So that's a lot to cover at one time. And I think we had a pretty healthy discussion the last time around, but to my recollection, we didn't really finish. I think a lot of our discussion at that point really focused on the 4.9 million that we were talking about in reference to the long-range facilities master plan and what the committee came up with. I'll stop here, but I'm going to say just one thing. I personally, for myself, I am very much in favor of the community forums because I believe in the community input, just giving them a chance to express to us directly what they're thinking, what's on their mind. It's not going to hurt us to have that input. Ultimately, we have to make that decision, but I think in many ways it's a good idea to have that at the proper time. As far as voting on those items that Dr. Finch is talking about, I think we should really talk about those right now, just to make sure we're all still in sync on those items, just to make sure there's been no change of heart or no different discussion that we should have about those, since he is asking for our direction on that. So anybody want to jump in here with their thoughts?
Okay.
Okay, one word.
I did a lot of in the weeds research on stuff, and so I think I'm just gonna start talking about what I'm thinking and not finalize it, because I want to hear other people's opinions and have a little back and forth. But so I'm just going to sort of overview the whole thing, I think. So I looked at the bond overview page that was presented to us, and I'm going back 20 years when I was on the board before. And every bond we've had, I'm trying to figure out how to get away from this. Every bond we've had has failed at least once before it passed. And so back 20 years ago, the high school, we voted on it. It failed 58%. And then we actually did it 3 months later and did a lot of footwork, and it passed just 3 months later at, you read the 60-some%.
60.8 or 60.8?
Yeah, that was a different 60.4 or 61.4. That was back in 06. Then we tried in 2009 for a $28 million Summit View and Apple Valley build, which of course we eventually did. That failed at a whopping 48%. And then again, it failed in 15, and it failed again in 16. No, I'm sorry, 15 and 17. We did it 2 years later. In 15, the junior high was part of the Summit View and Apple Valley and junior high, and you guys know this because you were on there. And then of course we passed it in February of 19.
Both of those failed that you just mentioned. Both included the junior high.
Correct. Both of those in 15 and 17 included junior high. The junior high was removed. I remember that whole discussion as a community member. And then it did pass, fortunately, in February 2019. This is where I know the disagreements come in. There's been significant frustration by some people with the disposition of the excess bond funds from the 2019 project. And I acknowledge, obviously, there was differences of opinion, almost split. So I'm not trying to say like everybody wanted it this way. I was definitely on the side of defeasing it. Here's what I'm going to throw out, and we need a lot. I know we need a lot of discussion because not everybody's going to agree with this. So I'm sort of proposing. There's about, I understand these numbers aren't exact. So I know Dr. Finch has said, excuse me, there's about $11 million remaining of the $19 million. We need $370,000 to complete the press box and the HVAC installation at Cottonwood and White Hollow. So we would go 11 million, spend the 370,000. I would propose, I'm throwing a number out, I would propose defeasing 9 million to do more than we actually said we would at 6. We would spend 1.5 million on the 3, I had 3 junior high projects, not 2, from the 4.9 million suggested by the facility committee: auditorium ADA compliance, gym floor and curtain, and water pipe update. That's on page 20 on the consensus recommendations from the committee. That leaves 3.4 million suggested by the committee, because the committee has said the 4.9, so that would leave 3.4 left out of that 4.9. That could really be paid for, and this is why I asked the question on the CapEx funds. You could pay for it out of the CapEx funds, the 3.4, or I think, I'm not sure about that, or you can add it to the proposal for the next bond. I would be in favor of pushing off the February date a little bit, because I'd like, if we do defease money, I'd like to take time to celebrate the defeasance and the savings, and just really say, wow, look how much we saved on this project, and celebrate that, celebrate the defeasement of funds back to the public. It's their money anyway. And then, I'm not stuck on the date either way, but I'd like to see a little gap for some celebration before we put out the other bond. I like the proposal on the bond, but I'm I'm just looking at it a little different way. So if that was a lot of numbers, please ask me questions, but that's where I want to start the conversation. The one question I do have for, and maybe Natalie could answer it, or maybe Joel can answer it. I'm curious if there was, and I'm not pro or con either way on this. So the parking, this is sort of a small part of it. The parking needed, was there actually a parking study for that? Because I look at it and I go, yeah, they're parking all over the streets, and I've parked in the orchard and everywhere. Is that for the 4 or 5 football games, or are they parking in the streets for tennis matches, track and field, and all that also? I'm not sure about that answer, if it's just football. I'm just curious if we're trying to solve a parking problem that is only 5 days a year, which I don't think that's true, but I'm curious.
Yeah, we do have parking during the for track and field.
But it
events.
overflows.
Yeah,
from,
there's
it
overflow.
overflows
Yeah.
from our general parking.
Yeah.
So they're still parking out there.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah.
And I think you asked a question about the parking lot. Did we do a study? Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I don't recall the.
If it's just
Yeah.
if it's just based on observation, was that just?
I don't recall a long-term facility study on it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if we. But if it's something I haven't seen and it's obviously a problem more than a couple weeks a year, then I'm not opposed to the parking at all. I just wondered if we're trying to solve a 5-day-a-year problem, or if it's a lot more than that.
Anyone else?
Sure. Guess what? Mr. Wolcott and I are in pretty close, we're in the ballpark here on our thoughts. I have a slightly different way to go about this, but so the number I start with in the capital project fund balance is directly from the reports that we received in today's packet. As of June 30th, that is $13,025,000. We would finish the approved stadium, press box, and HVAC projects at Cottonwood and White Hollow. That takes us to $12,655,000. I agree, we should start on the junior high auditorium ADA compliance project and the junior high domestic water project. It would require, if we proceeded with the gym floor as a, if we proceeded with the gym floor, that would require a revision or an amendment to our previous resolution about the spending of the remaining bond proceeds, because that is not presently on the list. So in my analysis, I didn't include that. I include it later on in my dissertation here, but I would support that. That's not and again, I don't want $150,000 or whatever that's a lot of money, and I don't mean to suggest that it's not a lot of money, because it is, but in the grand scheme, it's relatively small. So we go from $12,655,000. We spend $1.4 million and some change on the approved projects. That does not include the gym floor and the curtain at the junior high. So that takes us to a balance of roughly $11,249,000. I just want to go back and say I reread the report that was presented to the board, and again, my highest compliments to the committee for its work, and I really, after reading it the first time, after digesting it in the presentation, and then reading it again, I just really think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of great, it's a really cool proposal on a whole variety of fronts, and I want to do everything that we can to support that work, because it's a really smart project and or series of projects. So the only thing that I'm not sure about, and I haven't made up my mind one way or the other, is the merits of a 20-year versus a 25-year bond. I'm interested in learning more and educating more. I mean, my simple approach, my simple thought process about that is I'm sort of an anti-debt person in my personal life, and if we do take on debt, then or if you take on debt personally, you know, you want to shrink that term if you can afford to do so, to pay it off as quickly as possible. That's not to debate the information that we got in the last meeting. I think there's some further information and study about that. So that of all of what we heard last week, and again my dissertation this evening, that I'm not quite sure what the best move is there. I'm still up to be persuaded, and I want to learn about that. But with that said, I very much would like to see us proceed with the bond resolution using the long-range facilities planning report as the springboard for that. At the time that we are, or shortly before that, I'd like to see us defease $6 million, and I'd like to see us do that sooner rather than later. That would leave a balance of approximately $5.2 million at that point. And then if the bond passes, we have $3.5 million left to fund the remaining 4.9 that is covered in the plan. And that would leave I'll just put in air quotes, rainy day fund left in the long range, in the capital funds fund balance, capital projects fund balance, which I think is, I would highly recommend that whatever defeasance occurs, that we try to leave $1.5 to $2 million in that rainy day fund. And then if the bond does not pass, then the board can consider at that time whether to defease another $3 to $3.5 million. Again, that would still leave us about $1.5 million in that rainy day fund. And my math on that, if the other $3.5 million was defeased later on because the vote didn't turn out as we wanted, then we could actually, that would get us to about $9 million in defeasance, actually a little bit more than that, if my math is correct. So I would like to see us do it in two phases potentially. Phase number one is the celebration, and to celebrate, we're asking for your support in supporting this bond. And here's $6 million. And we're going to defease $6 million bucks. Here's how we propose to use the remainder. And then at that time, in 2026, the board, depending on the information that it gets, because I agree with Mr. Walcott, I really hope that we don't have to do a bond campaign more than once, but I'm in favor of doing community forums to get feedback, but where you're really gonna get the data is floating this bond. That's really where the rubber is gonna meet the road. I think that there were a lot of things that resonated with me in the last meeting about running a really positive campaign, really showing, despite my dissent in the initial vote as to defease or utilize the bond proceeds. The facts are is that very good financial decisions were made relative to the use of those funds, and that is to be celebrated and congratulated. And hopefully, how we spent that money, what we spent that money on, and the savings that it has created to the district, hopefully will buy that goodwill. But time will tell. So thank you for everybody's consideration. I'm sorry to kind of go on about this, but in summary, I support the bond resolution. I think the data is very clear that you should run that bond in February. The data is very clear. Statistical data is very clear about the success of running those bonds in February, or bond votes in February. But to celebrate that resolution with a first defeasance, see how it comes out, and then make some decisions from there after that. So thank you for your consideration.
Can we, well, it's just two of us talking, you need to know mainly if we can start dealing with the junior high stuff, right? I mean, you need to know that.
That'd be a nice resolution coming out of the discussion here, but it's really great
Sounds like even with some
discussion.
gaps in our thinking right now,
Sure.
we could still
Yeah.
do that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah, it'd
would
be good
just,
to hear from the other board
Yeah.
members too.
could I just say just one point before Joel, you jump in? I think the threshold question relative to the projects at the junior high is whether or not the board believes in the long-range facilities plan, and that's what we're going to do. So I say yes to that. I want to be just very
Yeah.
clear. I think Steve says yes to that, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But I
Yeah.
think that's the threshold question for the junior high projects.
Yeah, and that's where I would jump off is I'm totally in support of the long-term facility plan. That 4.2 or 4.9 million, I think that's a little bit of a discussion, but in theory, the long-term facility plan, I'm on board for it. I'm in support of the bond, and I want to see us getting moving on that. I'm in support of defeasement and giving back the money. And then I'm also in support of community forums, but I think that the direction of the community forums is talking about the bonds, is what we talked about last time.
The future bonds, is that what you were saying as far as community, or not how to deal with the form?
Correct.
Because we've already been through that.
But to get input on the plan and should we
Yep,
move forward?
absolutely.
And,
The long-term
is
facility
this the
plan
time?
and the bonds, yeah.
Right.
I don't know if February is the right time or not. I would defer to your guys' expertise on how to do those. I've never done them.
I think what Mark was saying, it'd be nice to hear from the community.
Mhm.
You know, the long-range facilities plan had majority community on it, but that's just a small portion of
Mhm.
the community. It'd be nice to hear from the greater community.
Absolutely.
Is this the right time? Is this the direction that we want to go?
Yeah, didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Strong.
Oh, no, I'm just wondering if you were done or you had more to say. All right, well, I guess it's my turn, so I'll be kind of short and sweet on a number of these things. I think most of you know how I feel about a number of these issues. I say yes to the community forums, which we talk about the bond essentially. I also think it's a must that we do that. I think the community has the right to speak up and let us know rather than us just jumping in without their input. After all, they're going to pay the bill for it, so I think they should have a voice in it. So I think that's a very important point. And yes, to running the bond in February, I think, timing is everything. We need to have a well-coordinated time schedule for doing it, and February seems to be the time at which we need to run the bond. If I recall correctly, I think that we got some data or some information telling us the best time to run bonds, and I thought it was about that time. We
Yeah.
didn't want to do it in September or
Right.
some oddball
Yeah.
time of the year where it has a history of not passing. So we
The
want
the
to,
data was that February was
the best
yeah,
month.
and that there was actually a higher passage rate if you ran them together. I think
Yeah.
that's because there's basically a get out the vote effort,
Mhm.
and so you're getting out the vote, and you're more likely to get that 50% for the levy, and then have a chance of getting 60% for the bond.
Okay, great. And I do want to talk about the committee and the long-range facilities plan. I too think that's kind of a must. I think the thing that really strikes me is that we ask a group of individuals to come participate, sign on board, give us your feedback, work with the plan, meet with us on a regular basis, and come up with a plan. And then I don't see how we not take most of it. It just would strike me as we're going against, we ask the community to get involved, and then we don't take their involvement and try to use it to the best possible purpose. So I'm a little concerned about that. And that's all tied into really, I mean, it's hard to separate these issues because they do have overlap. And we talk about the defeasance. I hear the numbers from both of you, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I do like Mr. Thorner's idea of splitting how we do that. That's strategy, and I like the strategy involved in doing something like that. If it passes, we do X. If it doesn't pass, then we do Y. I mean, we have a strategy for how we move forward. So I think that's important. But given that, the amount we defease and how we do it, I'm still with the basic fact of delaying some of these projects or not getting them done means increased costs down the road. And so what it boils down to is, okay, great, we're celebrating, we save this money and we're giving it back, not to mention how much it really actually translates into tax savings. It's not a huge amount realistically, but I do believe it's a good idea if it's not just symbolic, but there's some material sense in giving some of the money back. But also we have to balance the fact that these costs, these things are just skyrocketing. I can't believe some of the way costs are going up. And it's going to hit these materials and these things that we know we're going to need. So I just want to, I'm not against defeasing a larger amount. I just want us to be a little careful and think through carefully what these costs are going to be. And I can give you just a simple example. I had to FedEx something that was overnight mail. 3 or 4 years ago, that would have cost $10 or $15. It was $70 just for something that simple. So you can imagine what it might mean for some of the things that we might be talking about getting in terms of school projects. Not to mention that a lot of developers, when they see it's, and I hate to say it like this, but a government finance thing, they think that the money is there. The costs just seem to be, we're going to get the best of what they can offer. Probably we need those things, but we do have to, after all, we do have to weigh in what things really cost us and the biggest bang for our buck and when, because if we don't do it today and we know we're going to have to do it tomorrow, that cost is going to be up there. It's just going to increase. So I just want to encourage us, and I'm not saying I'm against what we're talking about doing in terms of defeasing. I just want us to be very careful and cautious and careful in our deliberations as we go forward with that, if that's what we decide to do in terms of the amount. That's really the key that we're talking about. How much of it do we really want to defease? So, I don't know. I'm torn. I still haven't made my mind up on that part of it yet. But I do want to say I, as much as possible, want to stay with the long-range facilities plan as they presented. I think they did a lot of hard work on that, and I would just hate for us not to utilize most, or if not entirely, what they say. So, and we don't have one member here tonight that can actually weigh in on their thinking. I kind of have an idea, but it'd be still good to have that perspective added in here. So I will stop there, and I would say that, as we move forward, I would like to hear more from the community, what they really think. We get, some participation here, but we need to hear, a lot more from them, and maybe the community forums, even though for a different purpose, some of it might be overlapping and they might comment on that, but we do need to make sure that we are very careful in our strategy moving forward. That's my only comment.
And Mr. Strong, you said you support the plan, so I want to make sure that's clear that you support moving forward with the 2 projects that have already been approved by the board, the junior high
Correct.
ADA for the
Yep.
auditorium and the domestic water piping.
Yeah, that was always a given to me because I see those as essential things. So.
And Joel, you said you support the plan as well, and that's the
That's
same.
correct.
Yeah.
Move forward with the
I'd like to move
auditorium
forward on this.
and the domestic water piping. Well, thank you. That was helpful for me as administrator to get that clarity from the board so that we can move forward with those projects.
And I do want to add one last point, I guess, and Mr. Wolcott, this goes to your point, and I really value your thinking on that. Would we be spending a lot of money for something that happens 4 or 5 times a year or something of that nature? My thought on that is those 4 or 5 times or even more I've been through there. There are a ton of cars through there. There's a lot. All it's gonna take is one serious accident to change our mind, but that's one too late in my mind. So I'm in favor of the safety issue there. And I've always felt there's no way for us to try, at least at present, to get everybody on that side of the road. There's a plan that perhaps gives us an option to do something like that. Improved safety is always of high value in my opinion. So, especially when you're talking about not just the kids, but the families who are participating in those things. So I am somebody, like I heard somebody say, that I parked on the other side of the street. That's pure madness if you go to one of those days when that happens. But that's my 2
No,
cents
I
on that
appreciate
issue.
that. I was just looking for
No, and
some data.
that's good discussion for us to have. It really is. So I'm glad you brought it up, to be perfectly honest.
It seemed like there's some support for community forum. Once school's up and running, it does make sense to have this be a separate from a board meeting, I think. Is that correct? Yeah, like we've done in the past. So the Tuesday, September 16th would be an open night, and then Tuesday, September 30 would be an open night. Those are the off weeks of our regular board meeting schedule. Do you have a preference on?
Well, both are good dates. I think we do one at the earliest date in case the second one's needed. If it's not needed, then we don't have to use the second date. That's my thinking. I don't know how the others
Give me the
feel.
dates again, please.
16th and 30th.
Yeah,
I think.
Tuesday, September 16th would be the first community forum, and then we can see if there's a need for a second.
Yep, and then we would have that available to us if it's needed.
That would give us enough time to promote because school starts before Labor Day. So we'd have a couple of weeks when school's back. We'd be able to really promote that through our communication channels.
More thoughts, Mr. Thorner?
Yeah, again, I'm perfectly, I think we've had a really good discussion. I do think that for us to get the bang for our buck out of the community forums, I think the board needs to have its plan. What's the bond? What are we going to defease? When are we going to defease? Here's what we're thinking. We've been a little bit, so we've been, and that's not to be a criticism of the discussion. I just think if we have this community forum, we have to bring something to the table.
Right.
We have to bring something to the table to receive some input on. And that doesn't mean we have to decide it tonight, but I think I just put that out.
Yeah, I think we need to come with talking points with a direction that we're all in agreement of.
Yeah, or at least reasonably close. Reasonable. And I think, I mean, again, just taking what Mr. Walcott said as compared to what I said, it's as my introductory comments, I don't think it's that, it's not miles apart.
Yeah.
I think the reason, just to add more fuel to the fire or whatever, just the reason I went for the higher number is because I looked at what, after all the meetings we had and heard input, the former board, decided on the 13 million to spend and the 6 million to defease, generally thought that. And there's about 4 million of that we're not doing because we took the land purchase out of it at this point. It's there, but it's for future and the bathroom remodel. So I was thinking, okay, if we're pulling that out, then let's just shift some of that back to the community. So that was my, I went through all the numbers, but that was sort of my rationale for going a little higher defeasement. But I appreciate what you said, the split, I like.
But I was trying to do the same math. Maybe the little bit of difference in the evolution, how about that? That's a little more positive of my thought process is because you asked a really good question during Ms. Wood's presentation about, well, so how do we fund capital project? Let's just say we didn't have any of this money. How do we fund capital projects? Well, for about the first 7 or 8 years before we passed the 19 bond, when I was on the board, what we did was we in the budget we said, okay, we're going to move $1 million a year from general to capital projects, and we did that for I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I want to say at least 6 or 7 years we did that. And so, but the evolution of my thinking is that it would be nice if we could do it. I think it would be smart to do it, to have, say, a fund of, okay, we did everything. A fund of 1.5 to 2. I was really trying to get to $2 million, but I was trying to maximize. I was really trying to get that $6 million first, with the idea of doing a little bit more depending on the data that we get out of the bond vote. But the evolution was leaving in $1.5 to $2 million as a seed. And my argument to that is the cost on that money is relatively low based upon the bonds that were sold in 2019. So as opposed to seeding that with a future bond that's going to be obviously at a higher rate should it pass. So that was at least a little bit more, Stephen, into the weeds, if you will, on at least my thought process there. So.
Yeah.
I think we need all 5 of us here to make any more
Sure.
Yeah.
firm decisions.
Yeah, I agree. That's a tough decision. I kind of go back to a couple of things that still stick in my mind. Some of these projects are going to cost more later, especially ones we know we may have to do. I like a lot of what both of you said, to be perfectly honest. It makes sense somehow if we could just, find a way to pick the best out of both of those sort of thought processes and make it work. That would be a good way to do it. What it really boils down to is how much money we really want to defease. I think that's the bottom line, because we can figure out what to do with what we don't defease, right? How much do we feel is appropriate to give back to the community? And personally, I have no problem with, what we discussed previously and what, the prior board had set up to do, but it's a different time, so maybe we do need to look at changing some things. I'm open to that. I just want to be careful that we don't do things that cause us later to go back and say, oops, and we need to ask for a little bit more money than we originally planned. That would be the worst of all worlds to happen. Mr. Thorner calls it a rainy day fund for something. I think that's totally appropriate. My only question is that really enough? Because things cost so much,
Right, but we have to be reasonable about that too, and quite frankly, in my opinion, and I'll take ownership of this, like that before we passed the 19 bond, I always felt like I always thought we should be more aggressive. I always thought we should be more aggressive about being more intentional about saving in the capital projects fund. And this is a whole, that's easy to say in hindsight, but I think I challenge future school boards to be aggressive about that, for lack of a better way of saying it. But again, back to the cost piece, defeasing 6 still means that there would be 5.2 in the fund, and the long-range facilities report for utilization, that's 3, based upon the cost presented, $3.5 million. So there's still
a little bit
$1.7 million of buffer, to your point of project cost escalation. Totally get what you're saying. I just feel like going back to something that we said or something that I think all of us said in the last meeting, is the passability of this bond. The defeasance to me can be a celebration to rally everybody in that process, and the $6 million number is a powerful message for former board, current board, whatever, moving forward on making good on doing what we said we would do. I think that's a really important aspect, just in the same vein as the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee. felt that it was really, really important to try to get to a price point on the bond that would be at or below what we are currently spending on our bonds right now. And so I look at all of this in totality.
Well, and and again, it's somewhat emotional too, because when I was campaigning, I've heard so many people, what would you have done with the bond money? Because I'm never voting for a bond again. And I know it was 50-50 at the forum.
Sure.
I get that. But that's all I heard when I was campaigning. And so I'm going, if we don't do something like that, I mean, we passed this last bond 60.8%.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and I looked at the numbers, it's 77 people. If it had reversed 77 people, that wouldn't have passed.
It was tight.
I mean, we were that close. And so, now I've heard so many people going, so whether they're still there or not, and I get it, because that was a lot of money. And like I said last time we met, I said that amount's never going to happen again. That was unusual, I think, of having that much left over. So I acknowledge that would probably never happen again anyway. But anyway, that's just, so for me, if we're gonna float a bond, I want it to pass.
Well, totally agree. I mean, I certainly want it to pass. I mean, there's a lot of debate that could go on about why or why not a bond passed before. I mean, could have been the economic climate. It could have been, where the country was politically. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on in decisions that people make about whether or not to support something like this. I still come back, and I'm not saying I'm for or against, I'm just simply saying that costs matter. I mean, the first thing people think of when they go to the grocery store is how much is it I'm going to spend today. I think many of us do. And so I don't want us to, have a mindset that this is going to cause the bond to pass just because we defease money. I don't know that I totally agree with that logic. I think
I would agree that alone is not going to automatically make it pass.
Right,
I
but
totally get that.
even to a large degree, I like Mr. Thurner's point on that a little bit more in that, it seems as though the point was made that there was going to be money given back. So I recognize it, and I think we should try to do as much as we can. Like I said, I just want to throw out that caution about, we can be over generous with that, or we can be conservative and careful. And maybe the best answer is somewhere in between there, instead of just, I guess I'm a little nervous with just saying, here's the numbers we're actually going to use. I'm not so sure that when that bond, I was there too, going door to door when that bond first didn't pass, and I was going around, talking to people as I was handing out those flyers, and I still feel the number one thing in their mind is what is going to come out of their pocket. And we can't overlook that and think that by giving them this, we're saying it. I think important part of this is that they want to be convinced that we are good stewards of the money that they entrust us to handle. I think as long as we do that, we should be in a good spot. And then the other part of it is, we're asking for a lot of money, $93 million. I mean, that's a lot. And so that plays a role in somebody's mind. I mean, our last one, I think why the first time it didn't go around, we asked for over $100 million, right? And so that's a huge amount of money. I believe it was pretty high.
81.
Yeah.
17, yeah.
It was pretty high, and I think that had a big part in why people said, no, that just sounds too much. I mean, if you stay under that 100 plateau, maybe that sounds better, but that's still a very high number. So I just want us to be aware. Costs matter to a lot of folks, and when we're dealing with these kinds of numbers, it's a big deal. But that all being said, I'm just sharing what's floating through my mind, and I'm rambling a little bit too. I get that, but I don't want us to be, overzealous with what we're talking about, defeasing, that's all. Good discussion on that. Anything more? I think we beat this thing to death. So we don't
No, I think
need
a
to do
very
any more.
fruitful discussion, and that
Except we do need to circle back at some point to really hone in on what are we going to do. I want to make that really clear
Yeah.
about the community forums. That's where I'll leave it.
And I think I totally agree. I think the idea, though, is we were waiting for Mr. Kephart to be here, so we have all 5 of us in that discussion, how we want to proceed with that. I totally agree with you on that. I like the idea of presenting something and then letting the community say, I like this or I don't like that part of it, so that we can formulate a final plan based on some real input.
Put it on the agenda in the next meeting.
Yes, yes.
All right, it will be.
I actually think the timing on this is really good, and I appreciate the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee asking to move up the timeline so that they could present at the last board meeting and give the board time to do this type of discussion. And just like Mr. Thorner said, come back around, really get a solid plan that we can take out to the community, then get feedback from the community on that Tuesday, September 16th. Meanwhile, we'll move forward with the 2 projects that were previously approved. That's the ADA compliance for the auditorium and the domestic water piping at the junior high. The gym floor and curtain we'll need to talk about at a future time, because we would need to have 2 public hearings on that, and then be able to change the resolution, as Mr. Thorner said. So
You
we'll,
could do that in theory at the time that we do a defeasance resolution.
right, yep. So we could do that at a future time, but for now, we'll move forward with those 2 projects that were previously approved. We'll schedule the community forum, and then we'll have this on discussion at our next board meeting so that we can get input from Mr. Kephart and move forward developing a plan that we can take to the community to get feedback on.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you. So I
Very
do
good.
want to thank the board members for a healthy discussion once again on a very important topic, not just to us, but certainly to our constituents and the community. So thank you for your comments and input. So if we're done with that, we'll move on to item 9 on the agenda, I think, public comment on discussion items.
So we actually need to have a public hearing for the 25-26 budget. So we'll need to open that up for public comment and then close that public hearing, and then have another public opportunity for public comment on the long-range facilities planning.
Okay, so if I heard you right, so we're going to have a public comment on the first public hearing
Yep,
right now?
yep.
And then the long-range facilities planning comments on that as well, right?
Correct.
So let's do the first one. Does anyone, I don't have any other pages here, but does anyone have any comments on the 25-26 budget? First public hearing, anyone? Come around the room. All right, I don't see any comments there. Then
And now close the public hearing.
that closes the public, thank you. And then we'll go
Very
to
good, thank
the
you.
next item, the long-range facilities planning. Any comments there?
Yeah, I do.
All right, first one to stand up.
Use your voice is a little.
And I know we all know you, but still, I appreciate you saying your name, who you are.
My name is Bradley Rich. I'm a teacher here at the high school and a very long-time resident of West Valley. And I can personally attest that any parking that you could improve at the high school would be greatly appreciated, because as the yearbook teacher, I go to a lot of sporting events. I would say I probably go to more than most. And I have almost been hit a couple times on here, walking on the right side of the road trying to get down to the stadiums. But really, like, the part that is not great about that is that it is not just for the football games. They're the worst, I would agree, because there's people parked, several in deep in the orchard there. But the last time I almost got hit by a car was at a track meet. So, and I think the reason is because when the teams come, there's that back area there by the fence, by the visitor stands, and they pack their day tents back there and their canopies, and so the people try to park as close as they possibly can, and it's awful. The other part too that happens is up at the Innovation Center. Is when you have soccer games, there's a lot of people that park on the other side there too. So it is, I assure you, it's not just I don't count the cars as I walk past them, but I can tell you that very frequently it is a problem at most sporting events that we have. The only ones I would say are probably fine are basketball and baseball, because those are right next to the main high school parking lots. So my yearbook students, and I would very much appreciate it if you could do something.
Thank you. All right, next. Yes, Mr. Marinacci.
I feel a little naked here. Peter Marinacci, good evening. Hey, just a few quick thoughts. So, based upon the conversation you guys just had. So I really like this word that you guys use, celebrate.
my challenge to you would be, what does that look like in terms of communication? Mr. Thorne was hitting on it a little bit when you were talking about if you have a community meeting, what exactly are you going to say? Taking a quote from you, Mr. Thorne, we're doing what we said we're going to do. That could be some really powerful words down there. Mr. Wolcott, I'll bust your chops a little bit, just a little reminder. I would not call it savings, I would call it excess. If we go back, some of the major reasons why we have excess funds is during that time period, it was during COVID, we had a lot of extra bidders, we got a low interest rate, and I think even the engineers would say they overestimated. So I just want to be careful, there's a nuance there, and I think people, such as myself, can get turned off when people use that word savings. I think there were some good bidding strategies. So anyway, just keep in mind. So just think about how, and who's going to do the communicating? It's going to be through the newsletter, email, social media. But I think it's a good idea to celebrate the defeasance and the benefit for all the reasons you guys talked about. I originally brought up the 15-year, the 20 versus 25 year, mainly because I thought by going 25 years, it would be a lower overall bond rate. And I actually agree with Mr. Thorne from a personal standpoint. I don't want to pay any extra interest on my debt quicker. However, spread amongst the community, I thought that would be a benefit. Well, I pushed Dr. Finch to go ahead and ask Corey to say, hey, what is that really going to look like in a bond rate? And also, the way the first presentation was presented, it only showed out to 2027. And I think that's a little misleading because you also miss out what's really going on with the elementary school. And unlike in my world, and although we do some seasonal structures and what have you, the bond rate for the elementary schools, it's not a straight amortization. There's a little bit of uptick, and part of that is to explain to me is because, well, the community has a capacity because it's going to be growing. And he did the same thing on his estimate for this new bond, the 92 million. So there's a little incremental increase, and the benefit doesn't really show up, was it year 13 or 14, and then it drops off. Well, as taxpayers, if I'm, and I think we all agree this is going to be very hard to pass, irrespective of what people say it's a great project. If it shows up at a higher tax rate, I think that's going to be a higher hill to climb. And it showed up, if I recall correctly, about $0.01 per thousand higher. And really, as I said earlier, I'm a big proponent of whatever, if this comes to pass, it has to be at a lower rate, those current, because I think Mr. Strong mentioned, 90 million is a lot of money. And I think it's going to be just that much harder to overcome. So whatever we can do to keep it below the current bond rate. So that's why I brought up the 25-year. There's other considerations involved. When we look at more buildings down the road, there's a lot of things that are in that. But I just want you to know that's why I was pushing so hard. And assuming the data that was just sent to me is correct, it loses its luster until like year 13 and then it drops off. So I just want to be clear why I brought that up. And then one thing, and I love the words that Mr. Thorne used, being aggressive. I brought this up years ago, and the point about setting aside money, as a reserve, Ms. Wood brought up reserve for the turf earlier today. The district should have a reserve for its entire physical plan. And my clients do it in the private sector. It should be done here. Historically, we've transferred about $1 million, and we really should be thinking about that long term. So anyway, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Marinacci. Anyone else? All right, public comment on discussion item, long-range facility planning, closed.
Very good.
All right, now we come to the action items themselves, or a couple of them at least. There's two of them under A, the 6700 nutrition policy addition and revision, second reading, and also the 6702 local wellness.
So no changes from the first reading.
Okay, does anyone care to make a motion on either one? I guess we could take them one at a time, or both of them. One at a time is probably best.
You can take them together.
We can take them
I
together?
will make a motion to pass 10B and C. No, in case there's questions, I will make a motion to pass 10B.
Well, we haven't got to that one.
Where am I?
We're
10
on
10A.
10A, sorry. I will make a motion to pass both policies on 10A.
Thank you.
Very good.
Too much is in my head tonight. There you go.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to pass those two items, 6700 on nutrition, 6702. Have a motion, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0 for both of those items. Now, we come to 10B, approval of resolution.
I'm going to do it again. I'll make a
Okay.
motion to pass 10B.
Surplus personal
That's
property, it's just looks like just the one item there, so unless someone has any additional points to make, I will entertain a motion on 10B1.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, we'll go ahead and vote on resolution 25-07-776, surplus of personal property. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion also carries 4-0. Which brings us to item 10C, approval of school bus purchase. It's pretty straightforward. Unless someone has a discussion or any more points to make on that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchase of school bus purchases rather.
I'll make a motion to approval of school bus purchase.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to approve the school bus purchase or purchases. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Motion carries 4-0.
And then just clarification for the record, that's for 3 buses. And as Mr. Thorner had clarified, it's out of next year's budget, the 25-26 school year.
Correct. All right. Moving on to item 11, items arising. Anybody with anything new?
Can I make a request of Dr. Finch? During tonight's meeting, we've heard about parking during some of our larger events, particularly the football games, and I had an idea. Could we look at the feasibility of what it would cost to have shuttles, our school buses, transport people for football games from the, as if you will, overflow parking from the junior high mid-level campus to some of these larger events? It would be great to just instantly wave our magic wand and install a whole bunch of parking, but I'm thinking that until then, perhaps that could be something that we could do. I don't know, obviously, obviously there's bus and fuel and drivers and so forth, but I was just thinking about that, and so maybe Dr. Finch could investigate that with Ms. Schmidt and possibly provide us a little relief.
That's a great idea, actually. I like that immensely. So
Yeah,
anything to improve safety, I'm all for. So
Sounds good. We'll look into that. Thank you.
thank you for that. Anything more under items arising? All right, moving on to reports, the travel log report. Hopefully everybody had a chance to really look at that. Any more feedback on that, Dr. Finch?
Nope. No.
All right. Superintendent's report.
Just shared information about certain federal grant funds that have been impounded or put on hold or frozen, whatever you want to say. We have contacted our local representative, Dan Newhouse, and asked for assistance to get those funds released. They were approved by Congress. They were approved by President Trump in the spring. And so if we were not to receive those funds, just to let you know, we have worked on a contingency plan. But there would be a reduction in services in those areas. And I had shared what those areas were in this written report. But just real quickly, The areas are migrant education, used for family engagement and services to students. Title IIA is flexibility, so we use that with Title I activities, which are for intervention and family engagement. English language acquisition is used for professional development. The student support and academic enrichment is used for after-school activities, primarily at the mid-level campus. And then West Valley does not receive the 21st Century Community Learning Center funds. We're still working as best we can with Representative Newhouse to get those funds released. I made a call to his office earlier this week, had contacted him immediately when the funds were frozen. And so we're still hoping for support at the federal level to get those funds released. But if they are not released, then we do have contingency plans.
Can you share, what is the dollar amount of those funds?
It's approximately $495,000.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else, Dr. Finch, on the superintendent's report?
No, that concludes that.
Okay. Board reports, board development, anyone? All right, that brings us to item 15 on the agenda, executive session, performance of a public employee, 8:25. Meeting ran a little bit long tonight, so how does everyone feel about 35 minutes to try to get through at 9 o'clock? I won't cover everything, I'm sure, but at least we'll make another dent in a sizable project here. Okay with everyone? All right. We will come back and adjourn the meeting at the end of that 35 minutes at 9 o'clock.
With no action to be taken.
With no action to be taken. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I seem to always forget that. I don't know why.
Yeah, they're going to let me do the honors. Okay, it is 8:58, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.